I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This was the second week of my holidays. I read a crazy amount of books this week, mostly because I backed myself into a corner with something that I needed to do and I did not space these out correctly. So in this video I'm going to include the books that are not part of other projects. I will mention which other books I read so you know what's coming up, but yeah. I read quite a few things this week. Also, two things. One, I'm really proud that this week pretty much half of what I read was all by Australian authors, which was amazing. Also, another thing that I noticed, and I've noticed this in the last couple of weeks, when I start reading a lot of things, for some reason, the characters in the books that I read, usually from different authors, part of different series, end up with the same name. I think I read 3 books where the character's name was a variation on Grace, and 2 where a character's name was a variation on Orpheus. How? When I never know characters' names before I go into books, so it just seems to happen to me. All right, so jumping into my stats, this is my reading week from the 24th until the 30th of September, although to be perfectly honest, most of this is from Sunday to Friday because I was not feeling great Friday night and the Saturday of the week prior, so it's even weirder that I fit all of these books into this time frame. So I read a total of 22 things, 5,740 pages, and my yearly reading total is 468 books. Now, a good portion of these books were all for review and they will have separate videos. Some of the books that I have read that I'm not going to talk about in this video are His Quiet Agent, Merlin in the Library and Agents of Winter by Ada Maria Soto, Friends Forever by Anh Doh, The Raven Song by Zana, Fraillon and Bren MacDibble, Runt by Silvey, A Girl Called Corpse by Reece, Daughter of Darkness by, oh god, I'm going to forget their names, by Catherine and Elizabeth Kaur, Farbish, The Horse That Braved a Bushfire by Nerida McMullen, I think. Yes, Nerida McMullen, and You Are Loved by Liv Downing. So they will all be talked about in other videos later this week. So I'm going to try and be brief because there's still 12 books to talk about and this could get long. The first one is a picture book that I received for review from, I think Hachette sent this one to me. Yes, so this was printed by Lothian, which is an imprint of Hachette here. This is 11 Words for Love by Randa Abdel Fattah and illustrated by Maxine Ben-Clark. It is an absolutely gorgeous book. This book contains 11 ways to say love in Arabic, and it's demonstrated through one family who has to flee their homeland for safety and how they find themselves in a new place and how they find love all around them. It is a really, really gorgeous book. I love that it is dual language and that it opens up an awareness that Arabic has multiple ways to say love. And in fact, 11 ways is not the limit. Apparently there's over 50 ways to say love in Arabic, which I didn't know before. Editing Steph here. I just wanted to clarify, when I say 11 ways to say love, it also means demonstrate 11 ways to communicate love, or just words for expressing different kinds of love rather than just saying I love you. Every word for love has a different meaning in Arabic, and I didn't explain that clearly enough while I was filming, probably because I was stressed by how many books I had to talk about. But it is a truly exquisite, gorgeous book. The illustrations are stunning. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I'm always on the lookout for more dual language picture books. Highly recommend this one. And then I read Shattered Sea by Catherine Cowles. This is book 4 in the Tattered and Torn series, but you don't need to read any of the others to read this one. It is a contemporary romantic suspense story set in a small town, and it is the book pick for the Chronically Courageous book club hosted by Bree and Ava, and I'll link their channels down below. So in this story we open with Logan, who is our heroine. She is in a car accident with her boyfriend and her other friends, and her boyfriend dies as a result, and this sort of shatters the friendship group. We then flash forward into the present day, and Logan and her friends never really reconnected after this. She has some new friends, she's working in a gallery, you know, she's sort of keeping to herself. She's very different from what she was as a teen. She had all these hopes and dreams, and then that sort of all shattered with this accident. Then she meets Bowden, who is a very famous actor who is currently in this small town to learn a little bit more about working with horses for a film role that's coming up. And he's trying to keep a low profile, but you know, she recognizes him, and he comes into the art gallery and he sees this amazing piece of artwork and ends up striking up a conversation with her. The two then you know, begin a friendship and eventually a relationship. But in the background of all of this, a lot of Laken's friends from her original accident start turning up dead from various accidents that suddenly don't really look like accidents anymore. And so that's where the romantic suspense element begins to weave its way into the story, because Laken doesn't quite know what's going on and why her friends are dying and whether or not she is on the target list as well. I had a lot of fun with this. I'm really enjoying romantic suspense at the moment. The writing in this was very easy to read. Laken does suffer chronic pain as a result of her injuries from the car accident, as well as the residual trauma of actually being in that accident and losing the boy that she was in love with. And it was just really well done, and I quite liked the celebrity aspect of Bowden's life. There, he has his own issues going on, showing that, you know, it's not that carefree life, and the two of them have to talk a lot through their hang-ups and their issues in order to make this relationship work. So I really enjoyed it. Also, I love this cover. Then I read A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain. Opal Rain is an Australian author. This is a paranormal monster romance or demon monster romance. It is book one in the Dusk Walker Brides series, and it follows Raina, who is a human who lives in these communities that are being sort of terrorized by demons in this world. And every 10 or 12 years, I can't remember which one it is, a Dusk Walker comes to various villages, and in exchange for protection for that village for the next however many years, the village must offer up a sacrifice in the form of a bride. In this case, Raina is an outcast in her community, and so without her consent, they prepare her to be, you know, sacrificed because they want to be rid of her. She is taken by the Duskwalker, and she is determined to find a way to get out of this arrangement, but she is taken to the Duskwalker's home in the demon realm, and she discovers that perhaps he is not, well, no, he is as demonic as he seems, but he's also a bit of a cinnamon roll. And one of the creepiest elements in this book is that the demons and the Duskwalkers become more human the more humans they consume. So yes, they do hunt and kill humans, but in terms of Orpheus, like, the reason he can communicate and he can reason is because he was killing humans. And no, he doesn't shift into any other form at any point in the story. He's who he is throughout the whole book. Raina is a very strong heroine. She's constantly fighting for her own survival, but she also begins to realize that, you know, perhaps things are not what she first thought. I am looking forward to the second book, which I think is coming out next year. I also read Start a War by Elle Thorpe. This is book one in the St. View Psychos series. Elle Thorpe is another Australian author. This is a Why Choose dark romance story. It is about Bliss, who as a child was living in a very unstable home living situation with her mother and her brother, and her older brother and his best friend got her out of that and had her placed with her biological father when she was about 6 years old. In the current day, Bliss finds out that her brother has been murdered and that she has inherited sort of his business. He owns a bar called Psycho, but the bar is a front for a sex club that her brother was running on the side. It's very exclusive. It only runs one night a month. Her brother's best friend, Nash, doesn't believe that she has what it takes to run this business because she is young, she didn't know anything about it, and he thinks in his head that she's innocent. Anyway, there are three heroes in the books. There is Nash, there is War, who is the heir to an MC in town, and then you have Vincent, who is a very quiet hero that she meets at her job as like a kindergarten teacher, but he has a very dark side that we find out about later on, and he is not quite who he seems either. This book does leave off on a cliffhanger, so be aware of that. It is a 3-book series. I will be coming back to it. I'm going to meet Elle Thorpe on the weekend, and I've ordered 3 books so that I can read them back to back. Content warnings in this one for an unstable home environment, drug use, domestic abuse. There is sexual assault on page, and there is the death of the sibling. I thought this was very fast paced. I liked the idea of the characters. I was very, very intrigued by all of them, and I want to know more about War and Vincent, and I'm very interested to see where Bliss's character goes in this story. Then I read A Merry Little Meet Cute by Sierra Simone and Julie Murphy, which was one of my anticipated reads of the year because I love Sierra Simone, and unfortunately this one fell a bit flat for me. I mean, it was fine, there was nothing wrong with it. I knew going into it what the third act conflict was going to be, and I spent the whole book stressing about that because I didn't want it to be what it was, and of course it was, and it just, like, the whole thing just made me feel very uncomfortable. It will not bother most people. I'm that person where if I know exactly what's going to happen from the start of the book, I'm just spending the whole time stewing that I just want my characters to be happy, and it was not very nice. Anyway, this is a contemporary Christmas rom-com romp. Sierra Simone and Julie Murphy do a great job with representation and all of that. Like, it's like there's nothing actually wrong with the book. This is a me thing. So Bee works in adult or X-rated films, and she is recruited by her normal producer who has branched out into family Christmas movies to star in his first film when the lead actress is injured and can no longer make the shoot. Bee sees this as an opportunity to branch out. She gets the opportunity to work with her famous bad boy musician crush Nolan, and she's praying that no one figures out who she is. The third act sort of conflict was not something that was going to be avoided, because of course people were going to find out that she was a sex worker and that this was going to completely blow up. But I just kind of wish that it hadn't been that. I don't know. Like, it's one of those things. I know I shouldn't have expected anything different, but I did. And yeah, like, it's perfect for Christmas time, and it's highly entertaining. And as I said, it's got great representation, fat rep. Both characters are bisexual, I believe. There is a lot of other queer representation. Nolan's mother is unwell. She has bipolar disorder, and he is constantly trying to take care of her long distance while he is on set. Like, everyone was likable. I just didn't like the third act stuff. Okay, I've got to pick up the pace because this is taking longer than I thought. I then read Queenie and the Krakens by Alira Anaya Serres, which was recommended to me by Izzy. This was a delight. It is a why choose merman shifter MC romance total delight. Like, that's all I can say about it. We have our heroine Naomi, who is this awesome kick-ass character. She has grown up in sort of the underbelly world of this world where paranormal creatures exist, and she has grown up in there. She is one herself. She is a mermaid shifter, and she has gotten out of that life and she doesn't want to be drawn back into it. But she accidentally witnesses a murder, and suddenly she's taken under the protection of the Krakens Motorcycle Club, which she's not happy about because ultimately they won't let her leave, and she constantly finds herself being drawn back into this world. But the most amazing thing is she saves herself every freaking time. She does not get saved by anyone. She saves herself, and it is awesome. And I desperately want to give spoilers for my favorite scene in the book, where she just absolutely destroys a group of people, and I loved every second of it. The only issue that I had with this book, and it's a minor issue, and it didn't bother me except when I saw this on page, was that we have one of the heroes is Australian. His name is Box, and it's mentioned that he's Australian. When we're in his point of view, like, there is no difference in the spelling of the way he talks and etc., except there is one moment where he's swearing and it's spelt phonetically, but the phonetic spelling of it is the accent of an English or an Irish accent. It is not how an Australian would say it. And I'm just like, are you serious? Like, it's a little thing to be annoyed by, but there is no way in hell an Australian would sound like that. And then also when we find out what his name is, not his road name, his real name, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, it's just a no. If you're Australian, you'll get it. It's just a no. Aside from that, everything else was awesome and I loved it. I also read Claimed by the CEO by Corinne Mazil. This is Woodmeadows Pack 1. Corinne is another Australian author who I'm meeting on the weekend. This is a wolf shifter small town paranormal romance. Jessica is new in town. She is human. She has come to town to stay with her best friend who's gotten her a job working with her brother, who is the CEO of a company. And when she meets the older brother, there is this instant attraction and they sort of start this workplace romance, even though Jessica is aware that it's not a great look. We know all along that basically everyone in this town is a wolf shifter, but Jessica doesn't find that out for ages. And I kind of wish, like, where this fell flat for me, it was fine, but like, there was nothing wrong with the story. But what I would have liked was that reveal to happen earlier and for her to have more time to process that rather than sort of what happened. Like, I'm interested in the world. There is a second book and I would like to continue it at some point. I'm not sure when I'm going to pick it up. Just wish that reveal had come a little bit earlier. And I think the second book will be a little bit different because it's the best friend's story and she is a wolf shifter, so I don't have that when is she going to find out mindset. I also listened to The Stand-In by Lily Chu. This was narrated by Philippa Sue and I was listening to it while I was doing some stuff in at work over the holidays. So this is about Gracie Reed, whose life is at a turning point. She's just lost her job because her boss is an SOB who basically fired her because she refused his advances. She is also trying to take care of her mother who is in her nursing home, but she actually wants to try and get her into another nursing home that would provide a different level of care for her mother. But she's taking this as an opportunity to turn her life around, and then she is approached by Wei Fang Li, who is a very famous actress who is basically her lookalike. Fang Li wants to hire Gracie to basically be her stand-in for social events while she's in town performing in a theatre production. Gracie is not 100% certain about whether or not she wants to do this, and then when she does sign up, she doesn't realise that she's going to have to spend a whole lot of time with Sam Yao, who is Fang Li's companion and a very famous, very attractive actor who is a huge grump around her. Gracie is trying to fit this mold, and there are some things that she takes to naturally, and others where she just, she freaks out because she's not used to being in the limelight and she's pulling the wool over so many people's eyes while she is impersonating Fang Li. This does deal with some really important issues like caretaking and also people who are dealing with anxiety and being in the spotlight and with burnout and all of that sort of thing. So it was really good. I wasn't a huge fan of the third act conflict in this one either, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the story. Then I read Logan by Nissa Catherine. This is book 1 in the Blue Halo series. Nissa Catherine is another Australian author that am I meeting her this? No, I'm not meeting her this weekend. I'm meeting her at Rare. This is also on KU. So this is another Grace. This series is a spin-off of a previous series, which again, I didn't realize until I started reading this book, but you don't have to have read it. So the heroine, Grace Castle, survived a kidnapping years earlier and she was assaulted and she was nearly killed in this, but she got out and she then became a therapist herself who helped women to deal with trauma. She was blackmailed into revealing information about various clients, including the men who worked for Blue Halo, who were soldiers who were genetically engineered to basically be super soldiers. Like, she feels horribly sick about doing it. She did it to protect someone that she loved, but she felt like she had no other choice. And so now she is trying to go underground. But before she does that, she wants to apologize to everyone who she hurt because it went against all of her morals to release that information. So she's turned up at Blue Halo headquarters to apologize to everyone. And there she meets Logan, who recognizes her sincerity, but doesn't quite believe why she's doing it. And as it turns out, she is on the run. She's living under an assumed name now, and she may or may not be connected to a case that Blue Halo are currently investigating where women are being trafficked. And when someone starts targeting her, Logan decides to step up and protect her until they uncover exactly what's going on. So again, this was another romantic suspense story. I actually really enjoyed it. I was very intrigued by the concept. I would like to go back and read the original series with the first lot of characters and then sort of find out how all this came about. Content warnings or trigger warnings for this: kidnapping, PTSD, SA, and quite a bit of violence in this as well. Well written, fast paced. Once I started reading it, I didn't put it down. Cannot believe it has taken me this long to start this series. I picked up Sinner by Lana Perhachik, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not. I was trying to listen to it. She is another Australian author, and I'm obsessed because these are sci-fi paranormal romance books with superheroes. Telling you last week I wanted more superhero romances and I didn't realize that this is what these were. And now I'm obsessed. So Sinner is the prequel. It is about Flint and Mary, who both work for a company in Cardinal City. He is an engineer and she is living the persona of a nun. She's not actually a nun, but she's been placed there to basically care for these children who are genetically created to embody the deadly sins in order to be able to fight them in society. But the company that created them is planning on using them for less than nice purposes, let's say. And so Mary decides to get them out and she recruits Flint to help her, and the two of them manage to get these kids out of the building, or most of them, and to safety, and then raise them as their children. Great setup. Loved this. And then I read Envy, which is book 1, and this follows the youngest of the children, Evan, who embodies envy. And we find out that there has been this rift between the family because one of his older brothers had been engaged to a woman, and Evan believes that she actually was responsible for the bombing of a building in the city that resulted in lots of deaths and displacement of people from their homes, as well as framing the Deadly Seven as the villains of the piece. He has been quite outspoken about this and it's caused a rift in the family. And he's kind of punishing himself by going out to fight in the evenings. One night he's injured and then ends up in hospital where he meets Dr. Grace Go, who recognizes that there is something different about his physiology, but he sort of leaves before she can figure out what it is. And then their paths keep crossing because he has recognized that she is his mate. And there is this thing where the true potential of his genetic modifications won't kick in until he meets his perfect opposite, which is someone who has no envy, and that's Grace. I love the concept of this. I'm so intrigued by all of the other characters and I desperately want to get back to reading all of them. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is another audiobook called Sleepless Over You by Sydney Smith. This is an romance from Audible Original. The narrators were Teddy Hamilton and Robbie Martino. It is an single father romance between two men who sort of find out about each other from podcasts and online in their social media presence, and sort of somehow end up stalking each other because they're very intrigued by each other, and then end up in a relationship. It's a bit far-fetched and out there, but it was a nice listening experience while I was doing some other work during the day. So I was glad that I read it because I've read one other Sydney Smith book, and I wanted to listen to a few more of their stories. All right, so that is it. That is my wrap up. I need to wrap this up really quickly because my camera's about to die. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Otherwise, feel free to leave me any kind of green emoji down below. I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.